Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Sustainable Advancements, Dr. Nain Mitra, and my team, Sana, Brinda, Khushboo, and myself, Aakriti, extend a warm welcome to all our viewers and to our guest expert for today, Suhela Khan, for an interview on Sustainable Development Goal number 5 on gender equality. Without further ado, I would now like to briefly introduce Suhela and then start with the interview. Suhela is currently the Country Program Manager at UN Women, leading the We Empower Asia program. The program aims at enabling women to access business and leadership opportunities in the private sector. She holds a master's degree in public policy, and since her graduation, I think her career has primarily revolved around large-scale women empowerment and women development. She aims to integrate feminist principles and strategies in programs to enable women to recognize and challenge discrimination and gender-based violence, which as a prerequisite to advance their economic rights. Her expertise lies in the areas of program development, implementation, monitoring, measuring impact, and partnership building. Her experience has enabled her to develop a close understanding of the intersectionality of the gender and other forms of identity and the challenges faced by them. She has provided technical inputs and edited several publications on gender equality and women empowerment. Suhela, we are happy to have you with us today, and we hope that the spirit of women power spreads out even further across the globe with this interview.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aakriti and the team for having me here today. I'm very honored and very excited to be part of this session today.
Let's begin the interview. I would hand over to my first team member, Sana, to initiate.
Aakriti, so ma'am, my first question for you is, reading about SDG 5 for gender equality, we often come across that I'm a feminist has become a synonym with the statement I hate men for many. Due to this, feminism as such is losing its true meaning. Have you come across this experience recently? And if so, how did you ensure that this misconception clears out?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sana, for the question. I haven't come across recently about this notion, but I know that this is quite a prominent view, and would like to highlight that it needs to be clearly communicated that gender is not about women. No, it just simply means that my rights, my responsibilities, and my opportunities should not depend on my being a man or a woman, a girl or a boy, or my conforming to any particular sexual orientation beyond binary, such that I'm able to realize an equal outcome. So gender is really how society expects women and men to have certain attributes, opportunities, and responsibilities when it comes to themselves and in relationship with each other, as well as relationship between men and men, women and women. So we really need to make sure that when we communicate about gender, there is no misconception that it is against men.
So much, ma'am, for giving the holistic perspective to it. My next question for you is, even today, we come across reports of tribes and communities where women are deprived of their basic rights. Since this is a normal way of life, many tribal women have seen for years or over generations, mostly unaware and uneducated, they tend to accept the violation of their rights. How could I contribute to sowing seeds of fundamental rights and their awareness in such a community of lesser educated and rural women?
Thank you. Thank you again, Sana, for this question. And what I would like to tell you from my experience of working in this area for the last 10 years, that this is not only which is true to tribal women and rural women out there, but it is also true for women like you and me. But again, like you pointed out, really, that with tribal women and with rural women, predominantly we see these kind of instances. So I'll tell you briefly about one of the conversations that I had with one of the group of rural women as part of one of the interventions that we were doing on livelihoods. And we raised this question of violence, and they responded by laughing it out and says that it is our destiny, and it is okay if we are beaten up sometimes. And now, if you would look at the statistics, you will find that there is a data that verifies, this acceptability and normalization of violence, both by men and women in urban areas too. So it really now then comes down to greater need of awareness, raising around the issue, but also conversations, with our sons and daughters in our families and in our schools around what is acceptable and what is not. So, and there is one thing that we have realized when working with rural communities on any intervention, be it around social, economical, or political environment, that that we need systematic and conscious strategies to make them understand that what patriarchy is, to make them understand that what structural constraints are, to make them understand that they are a right-bearing entity and that violence is not acceptable. It is against the fundamental human right, being a citizen of the country. So I would really, would like to point out on this importance of integrating the strategies of making women aware about their rights and entitlements and about them being a citizen bearing entity in all our programmatic interventions and advocacy interventions as well.
Thank you so much for answering all the questions so patiently. Now I would like to call upon my colleague Brinda to ask the further questions.
Sana. So ma'am, sort of going off of that, television in India is still a primary source of not only entertainment, but also information. And kind of daily soaps is also something that is predominant, and a lot of people consume that sort of media. Unfortunately, majority of the content that these daily soaps sort of air kind of revolves around these sexist notions that may not be outright, sort of misogynistic, but themes such as those are interveiled in their storylines or in their characters, etc. Also, kind of to the extent that like women leads are not really given much, except they're just not given much weightage, not enough character development. Their main purpose as a character over there, is making personal sacrifices to assist the main character, who's the main lead or whatever, and having them imagine marriage being the sole aim of life, where while there's nothing wrong with that, seeing so much of it, we kind of internalize and we kind of learn what we consume, right? Do you think such content has, consequences that may be grave, or does it encourage conventional mindsets towards women? And how do you believe we can sort of change this phenomenon?
Yeah, thank you, Brinda, for the question. And of course, it does, the regressive portrayal of women in media and even in advertisements, reinforces this notion of gender division of labor and a subordinate status of women. What it does embody started thinking and believing that, for example, care responsibilities is only a women's job. Because in all the advertisement, you would see women, washing clothes, or doing laundry, or cleaning the utensils, etc., while a man would be seated somewhere reading newspaper, and then women would be running around to take care of the kids and taking care of the needs, of the entire family. So this is something which, of course, carries, remains with the viewers and remains with the mind of people. And that is how, these advertisements and these TV soaps are reinforcing the gender division of labor, which is, of course, very, very which is adversely affecting lives of women. They are unable to use their time in productive activities. Rather, they have to spend a lot of time on providing care. And they do not have even a time for their leisure or being a part of, any social economic activity outside home. So, of course, the short-term as well as the long-term consequences of these regressive portrayal of women are really serious. What we have been doing as UN Women, and I'm very glad to share that we have launched something called Unstereotype Alliance at the global level. And this alliance really works with the major brands in the country, and also with organizations who develop this content and who promote media content and serials, etc. And the idea is to really make them aware about this aspect of that, how regressive portrayal of women is impacting women's lives in terms of their access to equal opportunities, in their access to equal opportunities, not only for work but also for leisure, for political opportunities as well. So that is one way of addressing it. But again, there is a need of conscious efforts and in the strategies around information sharing and taking concrete steps to address these at all levels.
Yes, definitely. Kind of the only way to correct such thing is the proper kind of information and the proper kind of news and delivering, sort of undoing the damage, for example, that these regressive ideas have done. I personally believe I mean, I cannot have a conversation about gender equality or gender equity without including everyone involved, not only men and women, and people beyond the gender binary and in the vast spectrum of gender expression are most times othered or even entirely excluded from such conversations of gender equality.
Yeah.
I'd like to quote Sean Fay from her book The Transgender Issue. She says, "It is entirely possible for a person to know that a woman is trans, insist that they do not believe that she is really a woman, and yet treat her misogynistically." End quote. Needless to say, this is obviously different. The entire experience is different for different people who are disenfranchised. But how do you suggest that we implement approaches to sort of be more understanding, inclusive, and kind of bring everyone together to benefit from approaches of gender equality, especially in professional environments and in legal administrative spaces?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is something which is very, very important to consider, and should be pursued through, again, systematic, conscious strategies. What a good thing in India that has happened is the annulment of Article 377, right? However, it's the first step, and we really have to go a long way, sorry. What we have also seen is that when gender intersects with identities and vulnerabilities based on caste, class, religion, disability, ethnicity, age, location, and occupation, it leaves women, girls, and those who relate with non-binary identities at the bottom of the pyramid. And there is enough evidence around us that we see that, okay, despite the progressive legislation, still the people who confirm themselves, beyond non-binary definitions, really face a lot of hurdles in terms of accessing equal opportunities and resources. So therefore, any programming and advocacy initiative needs to take an intersectional approach, in consideration. That this would mean that we are really consciously targeting and investing our efforts and resources on including most marginalized communities in the design, implementation, and monitoring of these efforts. But it should not come as an afterthought that, okay, now that we have designed, oh, we left out, let's include them. No, but it has to be a part and parcel of efforts towards their improved access to equal opportunities and resources. And I'm very glad to share that the program that I'm leading, that We Empower Asia, that works with private sector companies on making their policies and practices more responsive. I have come across many companies that are who care about gender equality, who really have a strong inclusion and diversity agenda, care about this aspect, and they are consciously developing initiatives to reach out to people who are marginalized due to them being not conforming to any one sexual orientation, or are beyond or identify themselves beyond binaries. But still, there is a lot more to do.
Yes, ma'am. I definitely agree, because we cannot just have that as this is done, so now it's for them. We have to, from the get-go, be mindful of everyone's sort of situations, everyone sort of, because I know for a fact, non-binary people, gender fluid people not conforming to, gender, have so much, there's so much stigma, and there's so much just misinformation that people disregard them entirely, and that is definitely not done. So
Yeah.
yes, thank you for your answer, and I'd like to pass it on to Akriti to continue with the interview.
Thanks, Brinda. All right, so I think my question is coming more to the practicality side of it now. So I recently read an article about maternity and paternity leave regulations in Germany, and it was a very interesting article because the title said, progressive policy, regressive society. And keeping this thing in mind and the SDG 5, I want to know, you have such a wonderful, diverse experience in program development. Where do you think, in your opinion, are these loopholes between policy and implementation in the real world? Where would you say, yeah, I've worked 10 years in this field, and this is where I see that there's no progress? Or where are these loopholes still existing despite all the advancements we have around?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's an important question, and very interesting one. If you talk about India, we have seen a lot of progressive legislations that have come up that really provides an opportunity for women to come out of their houses, and to really access opportunities for economic advancement and economic empowerment. For example, we have the sexual harassment at workplace law, which is very, very progressive. We have Maternity Benefit Act that you pointed out. Of course, Maternity Benefit Act, in a way is also something which we should aim for renaming it, not only in terms of its name, but also in terms of its vision and in terms of its concrete provisions to parental entitlement. Because what it does is that it really again reinforces that notion of that it's only the responsibility of a woman to take care of a child, right? So I think we really need to move in that direction, and it's a high time that we move it now. But also, yes, there are many legislations that have come up, but still we see a very paradoxical situation, because if you would look at the women's labor force participation in India right now, it's close to 20%, which is as against to 75% or 76% by men. So where it's it? What is it that is not working? And what is it that needs to be addressed? Of course, implementation of policies has always been an issue in our country, which is as diverse and as big. There are few things that we have identified systematically when it comes to policy implementation. One is really the lack of awareness, not only within those people who implement the policies in terms of the actual intent and in terms of the actual vision of the policy, but also the lack of awareness among those who are supposed to benefit from the policy, in a sense that then they are unable to demand for their rights and entitlements. So that is definitely one thing. But also, the regular monitoring of any policy or any program is something which we have also identified that brings that hampers its implementation. Say that there are moving forward, we really need to look at the policies and programs are designed in a way that they take into consideration this aspect of differing needs of women and men and those who belong to non-binary identities. Until and unless we are consciously integrating their needs in the design, the implementation would not bring that transformative change that we attempt to and that we want to achieve at the end.
Thank you so much. I think it's not shocking, but at the same time, it feels bad to hear that percentage, 20% of women in labor versus whatever 75. And I absolutely agree to that the whole module of making a policy for genders across the gender scale, if I can say that, is to actually understand the needs first and not just think, okay, that policy is good or bad, rather start a step before thinking about the needs. All
Akriti,
right.
there's one point that I also want to add into this conversation is the fact that, of course, there are progressive policies, but when it comes to gender equality, a lot of it comes down to the mindset. A lot of it comes down to the change in our biases that every one of us holds, right? So,
Yeah.
so when it comes to the implementation, I think a holistic approach has to be needed, where there are conscious strategies to address the basic, the underlying issues as well. So for example,
Yeah.
the issues of unconscious bias or issues of mindset change, etc. So
Yeah.
it's beyond just, it should be beyond a piece of legislation, but one which is accompanied by strategies and policies to address some of these issues which really limit its effective implementation and its effective outreach.
Addition, because if we compare and if we even look up to another nation, let's say we do a comparative analysis, all these policies are still there, let's say in Denmark or in Sweden, but the difference is that they have these policies at home. We say charity begins at home,
Yeah,
for example.
yeah,
So it is incorporated at home in the everyday lifestyle. So it doesn't
exactly.
come from outside to the inside, rather the flow is from inside to the outside. And yeah, you're absolutely right, that is all the mindset game, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, great. I think I'll move to the next question, and this is particularly referring to COVID and its effects on women. I would mention that. So one of the targets of SDG is the role of technology also. That's also under one of the indicators I read in women empowerment. Could you give us an example of how you see technology could actually help to mitigate the effects of a pandemic like COVID-19, specifically for women?
yeah.
And if you, of course, agree with that, you have anything in the future which you're planning with respect to technology to develop some learning and development programs, especially not just in India, but the whole Asian atmosphere, I would
Yeah.
say.
Thank you, Akriti. And I'm very, very excited to share with you that, together with the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology in India, it's MyGov's platform. UN Women did a challenge exactly on this aspect of bringing more women who have technology solutions to address the issues developed by COVID-19. And I'm very glad to share that from all over the country, we received over 1,200 applications, and these were from women innovators, entrepreneurs, scientists, students, etc. And they come up with excellent solutions on looking at various aspects of COVID and how technology could be used to address some of its effects. So the solutions were like really developing a non-alcoholic sanitizers, because we know that the sanitizers have a higher content of alcohol and which has adverse effect on our health. But now because of COVID, everybody's using a lot more than they used to use earlier. So that is something which came up. Solutions like a robot that could automatically transfer a material from one place to another in a hospital, so that the workers does not get hooked or does not get infected by touching medicines or clothes, etc. Also interventions around around this ultraviolet use of ultraviolet radiation in terms of, again, reusing the PPE kits. Because if you would look at this, the PPE kits, if you wear it once, they have to be discarded, which adds to a lot of waste and has a risk of also spreading the infection. So the reuse of PPE kits through this technology. So yeah, I mean, women are already there when it comes to using technology to address some of these challenges. And UN Women, not only in India and Asia, but globally, recognizes the potential of technology in women's empowerment and women's access to opportunities. And we integrate their access to technology as part of our various interventions through that we implement for women on ground. One such intervention is through our second chance education program in India, where we are really looking at access of women, rural women who have left out of education, to rejoin the education and give back their examinations and get their certifications through linking them with these physical centers that are equipped with computers and that are equipped with with laptops, etc., where women can come and to develop their own skills, but also get an access to give back their examination and come back into the formal fold of education.
That's amazing. What the real life examples which you've given. And when you were talking about the second chance campaign, I, I I had one example in my mind that I've seen across not just families, friends. It's usually women who don't have their certificates, degrees collected.
Yeah.
The men counterpart would have always collected it on time or whatever. And that's such a need or niche which you found out, and you're doing a campaign like that at UN Women. Really, kudos to you.
Okay,
Great.
there's one more thing, sorry, I would like to add, now we are increasingly seeing the use of artificial intelligence, etc., and so UN Women is also at the global level and also at the country level is also trying to influence the discourse, because, if women are not there right from the beginning in this entire, progression or development of AI technologies for various uses, again, they would be left behind. And again, having their perspective, having their insights into how these technologies work is very crucial, because if you are not taking into consideration, again, the need of 50% of the population, your product or your service, if it does not addressing the need of 50% of population and not taking into consideration their, their views, it won't be sustainable.
You maybe shed more light, specifically focusing on UN Women. I mean, that is the one aspect that you touch upon technology. What are the other programs or initiatives that has been taken by UN Women?
Thank you, Khushboo. So UN Women in India has certain priority focus areas. We work on women's economic empowerment. We work on ending violence against women and girls, and also gender responsive governance, which really looks into enhancing women's participation and leadership, but also working with the governments and central and state governments to make sure that, that their finances, their budgets are more responsive towards the need of women. Because until and unless, there is there are a lot of commitments which you would see on promoting gender equality, but they would not be translated into actions unless and until there is a proper budgetary provision to it. And that is what something which we work very closely with the government on making sure that the tools and resources, gender responsive budgeting is integrated into the planning process. But one of the things that really stands out when it comes to women's economic empowerment work of UN Women is the fact that we really work with a women's right and empowerment approach that specifically looks at this aspect of addressing violence as a prerequisite for enabling women's access to opportunities and vice versa. So, if it's not until and unless you are addressing the structural discrimination, issues of violence, issues of mobility, issues of transportation, issues of safety, it's very, very difficult to really see a transformative change in the life of women. So our economic empowerment programs are really, integrate a focus on addressing gender, on addressing patriarchy and addressing the structural constraints. A lot of our work is around skill building and entrepreneurship. We are guided by our mandate of also working on norm setting, which is really working with the government and the member states on addressing harmful social norms. And a lot of it is integrated into our programming actions on ground. Like I said, that with the private sector, the program that I'm leading is specifically working on reviewing their policies and programs to identify what are the gaps that are limiting women's leadership and participation in businesses. Again, one glaring statistics that out of the close to 20% of women who are in the workforce, out of them, more than 90% are in the informal employment and not in the formal sector, and not in the leadership positions where vis-a-vis men, and they are paid less wages than men. So there are a lot of issues around there. And as part of our normative work with various stakeholders, including private sector, we try to initiate these dialogues, and we try to support them with tools and resources to actually start implementing these principles called women's empowerment principles, which look at promoting women's participation and leadership in workplace, marketplace, and communities.
Thank you so much, Suhela. That was very useful, and to know a different perspective that you have brought it into. So now I would request Aakriti to conclude today's interview.
Great. I think I have so many learnings. Just I'm sure Brinda, Khushboo, and Sana, and all our viewers would also have a lot of learnings. But the key lesson which I take away from you as a powerful speaker and actionable person, or you represent a whole community out there. The most important thing you pointed out was addressing structural discrimination. And often when we're talking about big programs, campaigns, we often forget to apply all of this. So thank you for raising that. And secondly, I think the work which UN Women is developing, not just for women, but with the approach of intersectional gender and benefiting the society, that's remarkable. We support you, applaud you for that. And we really look forward to more and more campaigns like this, like a second chance, so that actually we are targeting not just that 20% of women who are working, but we target rather the rest 80% who are not still there in the picture. So I thank you for your inputs. Thank you, team. Thank you, Brinda, Khushboo, Sana. And on this note, I'd like to wrap up. Stay tuned to our channel, Sustainable Advancements, on YouTube for more information and content on sustainable development goals. That's it for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and all the best to you.